So here we are. This is how things are going to work then, is when you are going to get input from the user and you're going to use the scanner class, there's a couple of lines of code that are going to be necessary for you to have. So one of the things you got to do is you have to import the scanner class. And so the importing the scanner class is a line of code that says import java.util.scanner and a semicolon. And so this is what you would put, and then we'll show you where this line goes. But what we're doing right here is going to show the order in the program, and I'll show you a program that has this in it later on in the video. So this is a line of code that the compiler then will access the Java library and pull in the scanner class and make the scanner class available to be used in the program. Now, because you have the scanner class, scanner means to read, and so that's going to help us read user input. Okay, that's why we have imported that class. Now, as there is in this video, this specific object is being used. Oh, this doesn't. I guess this doesn't actually draw on here. But because this specific blue object is being used, then it is we're going to use a specific object in here in this program. And so what we do is we declare that object and we give it a name actually. And so this one goes scan is assigned new scanner and then system.in and a semicolon. And so a couple things that we need to recognize from here. First of all, the S is capitalized because it's a class, and class names are typically capitalized. When we make our own classes, the compiler doesn't care, but in the scanner class, this is a built-in class, so therefore it must be capitalized or else the compiler won't see it. The other thing to understand here, notice it has system.in. So can you see another area in a program that has a relative of system.in? And hopefully you think of the system.out. So notice the system.out, this particular class or package, is a thing that allows us to write code that will cause there to be output displayed on a screen. This, of course, system.in, is going to allow us to accept or to read input from the screen or from a user. The other thing is that this right here is actually what we call the name of the object, and this is what can change from object to object. You could have more than one scanner object, and each one would have a different name, just like we have many students in a class, and each student has a different name. You could name this scan, you could name this read. It could be scanner read or scanner input or scanner keyboard input. There's different things that programmers use. You could name it Allison if you want. You know, scanner Allison equals new, and that'd be the name of the object. And so that's the thing to remember. Now we're going to just use scan all the time. It just makes it easier and doesn't complicate things. Now another thing that you can do is that, and this is optional here, is you can declare the variable where the input's going to be stored. So let's say that we wanted to store num of dogs. So we go num of dogs, and so there's a declaration, sets up a memory location that is named num of dogs, and it is there's no value in it yet. It's just empty. Okay, so that's how this works. And so we've been through this before. Now you don't have to do this now. You can do it later on in the program, and we'll show you where. The prompt. Now the next thing that's important. In order, how do you know that they want an email address from you, or your first name or last name? So I brought up this website to show you. Okay, so let's say you wanted to make add a Google account or create a Google account. So this is right here is a prompt. Choose your Gmail address. So you would type in a Gmail address that you would want. Type in your mobile phone. So these are prompts, and then you as the user are entering input into that box, and then this has to be stored. Why? So that then this could be recorded, and then it could be used later on as Gmail is used. And so this is very important because this is exactly what's happening with our getting input from the user here. And so we prompt the user. How is the user going to know that we want you to enter the number of dogs that you own? And then it's going to be by a prompt. And so we take this, and we're going to go. You could write something in here like enter number of dogs owned. And then you go colon, space, and then like that. And what the purpose of doing this and the purpose of using the print method instead of println is this makes it so that when you run the program, the user will enter their input on the same line as the question, which is sometimes desirable. So anyways, so they have the prompt, and so now the user sees that on the screen, and then they know that, okay, I need to type in a number, the number of dogs I own. And so then they type it in, and then they hit enter. And then you need code that's going to read what they typed. And so what we have here in this particular line of code is you have this line of code that we're going to write is going to do two things. It's going to read the user input, and then it's going to store the user input in a storage location. All right, and we're going to give it another potential third thing that could be done, but right now we'll just do with the two. And so what you would do, what you would type in here, is the line that says something like this. Now we've already declared the variable num of dogs to store the user's number of dogs that they own. So we're going to go ahead and assign it now. Num of dogs, I can't type, is assigned, and then scan dot next int parentheses colon semicolon. All right, so here we are. Now this line of code is critical here because this is very important to understand what's going on here. Now the fact that we're using the word scan is because that's what we named the object. Its name is scan. If we use the word Allison up here instead, then we would say Allison.nextInt, okay, because this is the name of the object. I hope you've written on your notes that this is the name. This refers to the name of the object. That's going to be important to know that. Okay, so then now you notice that we have parentheses, and so typically, as you remember, hopefully, is that a method is typically indicated by parentheses preceded by a name, the method name, like system dot or by public static void main, and then you have the parentheses. And like we've done before, this is the print method because you have print and then you have parentheses. So this is the next int method. Okay, the next, and remember, methods they carry out a task or a series of tasks. They have a certain job to do. And so the job of this next int method is to read an int or a whole number. That's all that means. And so this line of code, this part of the line of code is actually executed first. The compiler will read what the user typed. So let's say they typed in 4. Then the next line of code they hit enter. Now this line kicks into gear. The compiler goes to scan.nextInt, and because this is an int, it recognizes this as a 4. And then what it does, the other action, so it reads, this is one action, this is action verb. The other action is to assign. So it takes that 4 and it stores it in the num of dogs storage location. All right, so it reads and stores. That's what it does. And so if you want, you could eliminate this. And you could instead go int here, and that would be fine. And so you're declaring, now you're doing three things. So you are doing this on this one. There's a declaration of the num of dogs. That's one thing. There's a reading of the input, and then there's an assigning or the storing of that input into the storage location. Those are the three things that go on in this line of code, and this is something that will be tested, and I'll be asking you many, many times. If you come in for tutoring, I will ask you what this line of code does, and it will be very important that you know and understand what the compiler does here. Now, remember, the input is gotten from the user, and then it's stored so that it can be used later, and there's a variety of reasons how something would be, or ways that that input would be used. And so in this case, we're just going to type something like num of dogs plus, and then a string is a lot of dogs, period. And then there we go. And so this, it'd be this for that let's say that the user typed was read and then assigned or stored into a storage location, and then later on it's called. And so that input is used in the output, or in the displaying of output for is a lot of dogs. So that's how that works. And so what we want to do is we now want to look at some examples of how this is used in code. And this is something that you should have on your notes, or you should have this handout. And so what we look at here is there's a couple things to note here and to bring up. So the first thing we said that we have to import the scanner class. It's this right here. You notice it's after, it goes above the class header. It's after a blank line after the heading. And then after the import statement, you notice there's a blank line. And then you have the class header and the main method header. And then a good thing to do is to get it taken care of right away. You don't have to, but it's a good thing to do, is to declare the scanner object. All right, so this is the scanner object being declared. Import statement, scanner object. And now we go on in the program. Now we're going to ask the user, and here's the prompt. Enter your first name. And then this is going to read it and store it. And then you have another line that will go, what is your favorite pizza? And here is another reading and storing. What is your age? It reads and stores. What's your GPA? It reads and stores. And then all of this information is used in a print statement at the end, which is not always what's going to happen. It's going to be used in other ways as well. Now there is something that I just realized that I had forgotten to bring to your attention, and that was the bottom of the page of the notes here, and that is right here. And so this is very important because if you think about, let's take a look at saws. You might use a certain type of saw to saw plywood, or maybe 2x4s. But would you use that same saw to cut down a tree? Okay, and obviously the answer is no. There's different types of saws that are used in different situations. And the same thing goes with methods that read data. This method here, this method is built to read ints or integers, and so that's what this reads. So the data type that this one reads is an int. In other words, whole numbers. I can't write with this thing. Whole numbers, positive and negative. And so that's how this is used. Here's the reading, and here's the storing. All right, this one, the next double method is obviously going to be used to read doubles, which means decimals. So you'd want to write double over here. And here's an example of it being used. The ticket price, which is money, is going to have decimals in it. So we say equals scan, or is assigned scan.next double. We don't use scan.nextInt because the user is going to type in a decimal. And then the next thing that's going to happen, we have the next method. So this method is used to read strings. So you put the word strings over here, but you need to qualify it by saying it's one-word strings. So it's only single words. Now this isn't the best example because some last names are more than one word, but let's say you want to ask the user for their class or their grade level, whether it's freshman, junior, senior, or sophomores, and so those are single words. And so in that case, you could just use the next method. Now let's say you ask the user for something that might have more than one word, so that'd be full name, or the name of a business, or something of that nature. So this is one word strings. This is one or more. This is one or more words. And it'll handle a one-word answer or response. It'll handle more than one word. So both of these are strings. So notice we don't use scan.nextString. Now somebody's going to try that. It's not going to work. It's either scan.next, that's for one-word strings, or scan.nextLine, which is for one or more words. That would be a string. All right, so let's go down here again and look at this example, because there's just a couple more things to point out, and then we'll be done. And so if you will notice in here that we were asking for the first name, and so we did use just the next. Oh my goodness, how does that happen? I don't know how that happens. So we just use next. Then we ask for the favorite type of pizza. Well, that could be meat lovers or something. So it could be two words, and so we use next line. And then we have your age. So that's typically going to be an integer. You could do a double, but in this case we set it up to be an int. GPA definitely has decimals, and so we use double. The other thing, the last thing that we want to look at here is here, and this is what I had mentioned before, is that you don't have to declare a variable first and then assign it later. So you can declare and assign the input on the same line. So here we have int age is assigned scan.nextInt, where up here we have we went int age up here, and then later on down we did age is assigned scan.nextInt. So just remember, you can do it either way. And the very last thing here is that you can there are some situations where when you use scan.nextLine, it will cause the compiler to skip and will not allow the user to answer the question. And therefore, in that situation, we would use we would just type just a line of code that just says scan.nextLine in it, and it would take care of that. And so here is an example of this, and this will show you how a program that asks for user input should respond. So what I'm going to do here is we've already compiled this, I think. Well, it's compiled in. So this is the code actually that you have on your paper. So when we run it, here's what's going to happen. So notice it says enter your first name. That is, of course, right here. That's because of this code. And so notice it waits. The reason it's waiting is because of this line. This line says scan.next. So it's going to read the input, and hopefully it's just a one-word string. And so it will wait until the user types in anything. So notice it stops. So the user types in something and hits enter, and enter causes the user or the compiler to go to the next line. So here Sally, this line here in the background has read Sally and has stored it in first name. And then it goes on and it asks the next question, what is your favorite type of pizza? And so the user types in, because it can handle more than one word. We'll just type meat lovers, hit enter. What's your age? And then again it waits, and we could say 16, and then enter your GPA 3.76, and then hit enter. And then it uses that information that was stored. So it uses 16 because that's what the user typed. It uses 376 because that's what the user typed. And so let's take a look at what happens if we don't have this extra scan.next line. So what should happen is, I'm commenting this out so it doesn't see it. So what should happen is after it asks the question, your favorite type of pizza, it should skip and then go on to ask what's your age. So it doesn't even allow the user to use it or to answer. And so here we have a compile, and then we run it. And so here's your first name. What's your favorite type of pizza? Now notice it says type of pizza, and then it says what is your age. So it doesn't give you the chance to answer the question favorite type of pizza. And so what we do then is we put scan.next line here, and this allows then for the or causes it so it will stop. So we have Sally, and then we have, see, there we go, we can answer the question. So that's how input works, and hopefully this will help you understand how to get input from the user.